Ramadan.
So that voice note came from Stuart Murray, or Murray, in fact, Stuart Murray, from Ward 54, Robertsham area, south of Johannesburg. The reality is that story, you can copy and paste that in many suburbs in this world-class city. But the fact is, it's not just Johannesburg. You could be listening to me from wherever. South Africa has a water crisis. How are you dealing with it? How, in fact, should we be dealing with it? I'll tell you something. If it was not Ramadan, you'd use a nasty word starting with the letter G, and I think understandably so that you're absolutely fed up, and I think you're entitled to be fed up. But what's the story behind the story? We'll get a response from Joburg Water later on, right? We'll chat to the spokesperson. But let's try and understand more about it in terms of why do we have what we have. So Dr. Anthony Turton is with me. He's a water expert. Dr. Turton, appreciate your time. Good morning.
Good morning to you and the listeners. Thank you for having me.
I thought you were going to come with like pails of water and say, Ashraf, I can sort out your water problem. Here's some water. You're okay. But that's not the case, right?
No, it's not the case. In fact, I'll give you an interesting number to start off with because you were talking about load shedding in your intro. So in South Africa, approximately 20% of all of the energy use in the country, all of the electricity use, just under 20% goes to moving water around the country. So in other words, if you are energy constrained, you also automatically put pressure on the water on the water supply chain, which is a very complicated chain, particularly in Johannesburg, because Johannesburg is the only city in the world that's not on a river, not on a lake, not on a watershed, not on a seashore. It's on a continental watershed divide. So you have to pump the water uphill from the Tugela River in KZN, all the way over the Drakensberg Mountain, all the way up into your particular place near Soccer City.
Well, I mean, I think that's an interesting fact you made, and it's something I've been aware of. So, I mean, just to get the clarity, it's not I don't think it's the only city in the world, but it's probably one of the most significant cities in the world. The only one of the more significant cities that are absolutely inland. You're absolutely spot on, right? Is that a mitigating factor? So when the city of Joburg says, well, we don't have water, it's like, yeah, but you know what? We're not near rivers, we're not near the ocean, so like, sorry, man.
So, well, it's not a mitigating factor. And the reason why Johannesburg became the center of gold production in the world, the majority of all the world's gold was at one time produced in the city of Johannesburg. And the reason why Johannesburg became the financial powerhouse of Africa is precisely because of very, very smart engineers. And those engineers have been working for 120 years. Even longer than that, to build these very sophisticated systems to get water from ever distant places, all the way from the Lesotho Highlands, all the way from Ladysmith in KZN, up over the mountains, etc. So we ultimately rely on these. Let's call it a body of very sophisticated engineers. And that's where the problem lies. Those people have been purged, they've been lost, they've been abused, they've been fired, they've been whatever. But those people are no longer there. And therein lies the nub of the problem, because within this whole thing in Johannesburg, you cannot have a city of that size without a very sophisticated planning department. And it's the planning thing that has failed over the last 25 years. So if you can't plan, you can't anticipate, you can't budget, you can't do the necessary. So we're not going to just suddenly come and turn this thing around in the next 5 minutes. It's a structural problem that we're dealing with.
So let's then talk about the state of play. Now, we talk about the state of the nation. That's another whole conversation completely. But the state of water. Let's stay with Joburg for now, right? What is your understanding of the state of play regarding water in the city right now?
Well, the simple word is it's very complex. So let's break down that complexity. So the first bit of complexity is that we need an enormous amount of infrastructure to get the water from the Vaal River through these process plants in Vereniging, and then pump it all the way through Soweto, all the way up into Johannesburg, and then distribute it. The tens of thousands of kilometers of piping. So that's the first thing. And all of those pipes have been designed to a specific flow, to a specific volume. They've been sized for a specific purpose. And that specific purpose is defined by the water use license that Rand Water has. So all of the design right now from Rand Water side is up to the maximum value of the water use license. They cannot put more water through. Well, they can put a little bit more, but then by putting the more water through, they've got to increase the pressure. And by increasing the pressure, you now start having all these leaks and all these breakages and failures in the system. So there is an upper finite limit to it. That's the one part of the problem. Then the second part of the problem now is that the different municipalities have to plug into that system, and they have to pay. They have to pay their water service provider, Rand Water, and in many cases they have not. There's a massive amount of debt that the municipalities owe to Rand Water. So Rand Water is financially cash constrained, very considerably so. And then of course in the city itself now, in the lead-in there was this gentleman talking about the water tower that's now just over a meter of water inside it. Well, you need more of those towers, and those towers are all part and parcel of infrastructure, and you should ideally have enough water in those towers for 48 hours of backup. And at the moment, we probably have enough for maybe 1 hour of backup or something of that nature. So these are all of the complex things, and all of this is about planning. It's all about planning at the end of the day. But there's one more thing I'd like to say, and that's also very important in the context of this conversation. By virtue of the fact that Johannesburg is on a watershed, as I said, it's the only city that literally straddles a watershed. And because of that, all of our wastewater goes back into the rivers. And in other words, all of our sewage flows goes back into the very same water, the very same rivers that we pump out of. And I'll give you another number. Of all the energy in the country, 3% of that goes into the treatment of wastewater.
Okay, goodness, lots to be concerned about. Here's a question to you then. So let's take it back to what I said earlier on. Robert Sham, to the average person watching us and listening, they can't deal with what happens at a macro level. They like, I want water. That's what they want, right? I live in the northern parts of Joburg. It's not off, but there's a trickle. I sense that, right? Now, so what do you? You notice the councillor said, I wish I had more good news for you, but like the good news, I'll bring some cankers for you. Like that's the good news, right? This is in Joburg 2023, right? So how do we turn it around? Like I know you mentioned it's more than one day. I get that, right? And you made the point already that the obvious link between load shedding and water shedding. But how do you? Are we able to turn it around, like to provide emergency relief immediately and then get back to the long-term planning? Or is it a case of that this is going to happen all the time, and what's happening with water shedding replicates what has already happened with load shedding? If too much is on at the same time, the powers crack up. In this case here, the pipings crack up. Yeah.
Yes, okay. So there are multiple responses that are needed. And I think the first response is that you've got to put a credible team of technically competent people together. And I think the big challenge is to depoliticize water. How can you have a situation? I'm posing a question. I'm not trying to deflect your question, but how can you have a realistic plan of action when there's infighting over who's going to be the mayor and who's going to chair what portfolio in the city of Johannesburg municipality? This is just absolutely ridiculous. So until such time as we have political stability at leadership level, I cannot see us realistically turning this around. So let's assuming we can get that political stability. Then if the next thing would be to, I would say, is to establish a team of technically competent people and unencumber them. Untether them from any political party. Let them just look at the technical stuff that needs to be done, come up with the budgets, do all the necessary technical planning, and then put that credible, coherent plan on the table, unencumbered by politics. Right now, it's the politics that's killing this whole thing. So until such time as we can depoliticize this, I'm afraid I don't see us finding an easy solution to the thing. But it is actually quite easy. And in fact, we're seeing it of all places in the security sector. We know that in 2021, there was this mass looting in the KZN, and we now know that the private sector has come to the party, and they've just launched a sophisticated control center that is used by the state. But basically, the private sector said, we need the service, and we're willing to pay for it. And I think the same is going to start happening in the water service provision space. Exactly the same will happen in the energy space as well.
All right, now here's a quick one to you. In fact, I've tweeted about this before. I said, when the Joburg city municipal chairs occurred, in terms of the mayoral municipal chairs, right? I said the first casualty of a failed coalition is service delivery. So you and I are in sync on that, right?
Absolutely.
What we may not be in sync with is what happens next. You're suggesting that the water issues will only be resolved, and maybe other service delivery issues when we take the politics out of it. Now, I'm going to suggest to you that, like it or not, the politics will never get out of a city, because that's the very nature of the political parties wanting control of a city.
Well, if that's the case, then we have to accept the reality that South Africa will always have a fundamentally water, energy, and capital constrained economy. Simple as that. I mean, if that is the choice that society makes, they're free to make that choice, but then they need to understand that the consequences of that choice are that the city of Johannesburg will then, under those circumstances, have reached the maximum of its growth potential, and from now on will go into a long, slow, steady state of decline. And therefore, as a business person, you have to make your decision about whether you can survive under those circumstances or ultimately migrate. So this is a harsh reality that I'm giving you now. But this is what I do: is I call it the way I see it, and that's the way that I see it.
Okay. In fact, I'm going to ask you for advice. So maybe that listeners can sort of keep a list of what they can do, both at a family level and at a business level. If, for example, the city of Joburg continues with its arguments and have mayoral changes and service delivery issues, and we are further handicapped by the impact of load shedding on water shedding and what that really means. But we'll do that right after this.
Okay.
Sunshine D margarine, the perfect addition to your seri table for spreading, baking, and cooking. Sunshine D is rich in essential vitamin A, E, and D, and is the tastiest way to get their day or night started. Sunshine D. Tastes nice, no lies.
World-class financial services only at Sapphire Global, your financial partner. If you are looking for Islamic, Sharia, and ethical financial products, look no further. Sapphire Global offers a wide range of financial service offerings, from short-term to life and investments. A full-service center with all financial requirements under one brand. Our highly skilled and experienced consultants are ready to help protect your financial future. Contact us on 041 001 0184 or visit our website on www.sapphireglobalfs.com. Sapphire Global is an authorized financial services provider.
When you give zakah, a powerful chain of events is set into motion, providing life-saving food, care, and financial support, delivering kindness and hope to those desperately in need. That's the power of zakah. This Ramadan, give your zakah with Islamic Relief.
Are you looking for a cross-border road transport company that is committed in achieving high safety standards, who is fast and efficient, and also excel in customer service? Gardi Global specializes in cross-border transport from South Africa to Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Zambia, and Malawi. Gardi Global, situated at 10 Daniel Road, Benrose, Johannesburg. For inquiries, contact our trained staff on 011 614 3108 or email info@gardiglobal.co.za. Safe long haul into Africa is our business. Gardi Global Transport.
Abu Huraira narrated that he heard the Prophet Muhammad, may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, say, "In black seed there is a healing for every disease except death." This Ramadan, experience the health benefits of this ancient blessed seed by using the Tib Black Seed range. Black seed assists the body to boost immunity, regulate blood sugar levels, reduce inflammation, and act as a potent antioxidant. Experience a holistic approach to health by introducing the Tib Black Seed range into your Ramadan routine. Available in capsules, pure cold-pressed oil, and a vapor rub. Trust Tib Health Sciences for quality black seed products. For more information, visit blackseed.co.za. Available at leading pharmacies.
Salam Media, your spiritual companion this Ramadan.
Right, we've had a comment from Mohammed Arai saying the rhetoric that load shedding affects water and water outages. How much truth to that, Doctor? I think Mohammed, we've got that answer already, right? But perhaps the answer we don't have is what happens next, right? So, Dr. Anthony Turton, before you wrap up, so here's my question to you: what advice can you give households in the city of Joburg, what advice can you give businesses in the city of Joburg, small and big, because by nature, people want to stay alive, endure, and then thrive, right? What advice can you give them?
Okay, I'm going to be frankly honest with you now. And when I say I'm frankly honest, I'm going to be harsh. I'm going to give you a binary choice, because that's the harshest of all choices. The first part of that binary choice is, do you see a future where you have to migrate your business away from where you are at the moment? This is happening in certain companies already now. They are making a logical choice to migrate away to a place where there's greater water safety. That's a very hard choice to make. And if you don't want to do that, then the next choice that you make is, how do I insulate myself from the system? How do I create my own buffering capacity? And what that then means is that you've now got to start assuming some of the responsibilities of the state in providing on-site water storage. So you either have to start finding an alternative supply of water, which is complex in its own right, or you have to start building into your own premises. You have to start building in storage capacity, let's say for 48 hours, or let's say however long it is that you need to survive for a period of outage. In other words, those are the two harshest of all options. And underneath each of those options now, you start getting a whole lot of hierarchy of other issues that have to happen. But I would say the second option is probably the most viable one, because the first option, to actually migrate away from the problem, is an extreme option. But certainly we are starting to see companies that are doing it now, and this unfortunately is one of the reasons why our economic growth in the country is as stagnated as it is.
Okay, and never heard of the word Jojo Tank before, but I certainly know all about that now. Perhaps that's the type of thing you're referring to. Dr. Anthony Turton, appreciate your time. Thanks for the insight. Thank you for the insights.
Thank you very
Absolutely. Well, you are certainly got us thinking. I mean, what do you do? So you have a business, and in Greater Joburg, do you migrate? When it means migrate, move to an area outside of the city of Joburg, maybe I don't know, Bloemfontein, Cape Town, Durban, as a business and as a household that you can't really move. What are your plans? In fact, the sense of doing things outside of the state has already existed for a long time. Think about private security. Private security has grown exponentially in the last 2 decades, primarily, I would think, because of people's inability to trust the police from delivering the service. So what has happened? We have our own private security. That doesn't exist in many, many, many countries in the world. And of course, it comes at a price, isn't it? Because it's going to cost you money. And perhaps more of the same now, in terms of electricity, and that, looking at solar electricity, people getting off grid, and now with regard to water, it's basically making your own plan. The South Africanism, market plan. Well, what's your plan? You tell me. By the way, if you have any comments, WhatsApp 0617660355, text or voice notes, or you can comment on our social media pages. Even now, just tag Salam Media and do tag myself. I want to know. Now, that's one thing. We get another take on the water issues regarding the city of Johannesburg. We check with the spokesperson in a moment.
And starting tomorrow, how is this going to inconvenience you?
In every 5 times a day, we need running water to be able to pray. And if we don't pray, our sons are upon the councillors.
I'm saying, if you park a tanker at Harry Road, we have lots of old people on Harry Road, in Benton Road, Fawns Road, in fact, the whole of Robert Sham. How are they going to go with their crutches and wheelchairs and fetch? They're going to fetch a bottle of water for a whole week?
Water tankers
The tankers need to go on each street. Stop at certain doors for people to get water. But that's not the point. And that's not the point. We should be getting water through our taps.
It's 1 week since we had a meeting here the last time. And nothing was done this 1 week. So what's going to happen in this meeting? And there's absolutely nothing. What they claim it ran water shut, because yesterday when there was a meeting, conveniently the taps were open for 10 minutes and there was full power. So they can switch on when they want to.
And every time I call for a protest action, water comes and Rashida Landers is on the picture. So happened Korea wasn't there for her to be front page. I'm sorry.
Yes, she likes the state.
Thank you.
So that's one video. I'm trying to check if we have another video. That video, you could pick up audio if you just listening, but the video also, and they're strong, and there's strong comments from people. I mean, I thought the lady who made the comment about we need to clean ourselves 5 times a day, otherwise who's going to be responsible for us not praying and for our sins? I mean, she's right, but for many other people who are not of the Muslim faith, it's also just water to drink, water to stay alive. Like, who's responsible for that, right? So there's so many issues, and of course, naturally, people pick it up and express what impacts them directly. So what impacts them, or what impacts me, is at the moment in the northern Johannesburg suburbs where I live, there's water, and I'm praying, long may that continue. But I know in Robertsham, that's not the case. Ward 54, they are fed up, isn't it? Let's get further comment from Puleng Mopeli, who's the spokesperson for Joburg Water. Puleng, appreciate your time. Good morning.
Good morning, and good morning to your listeners.
Thank you. Now, you probably heard, I hope you heard that clip of those women talking, 3 or 4 of them, and, expressing whatever but in fact, you can copy and paste that and transport that to Soweto, to Riverlea, to Rosebank, to wherever else in the city. And when there's water shortages, that's how people express themselves. Well, how do you respond to that level of dissatisfaction?
Ashraf, I understand that there is frustration with the residents of the city of Johannesburg, and this is all across the city. And what we need to understand is that as a municipality, there is a dependency on a bulk supplier. And all these have been happening, if you look at in the past 3 months, that I will only touch in this month alone, where the Energy treatment plant experienced a power failure in the early hours of Monday, which is in the previous week. And this affects and impacts on our infrastructure, because we are dependent on that aging of pump station to pump water into our resources, meaning the reservoirs as well as the towers. So yes, it really frustrating because this happens over and over again and affecting the same systems. And this is your commando system, which includes the Brixton, Hurstfield, and Crosby reservoirs, as well as the Crown Gardens, which the frustration are now coming from listening to these audios. So your Eden Nest, Meturena, Alanmena, and some parts of the Soweto system. And I understand that they would say, yes, why aren't the northern suburbs not affected? But then that is entirely not the truth, because even in this year alone, in the past 3 months, we've had an episode where the Kalmini system was impacted, affecting the areas in the Linksfield and other areas, as well as those in the Midrand area. So I do understand, and I understand that people want water on their taps. And what we've been doing, because we do not have control on these systems, or when our power supply experiences a power failure, we've been supporting and providing water tankers in these affected areas.
So let me ask you this then. I mean, I understand that part, and you're right. I live in Joburg, in the northern suburbs, and I absolutely have been affected, not to this level, but we've had times when it's been 1 day, 2 days, where there's been no water. But let's take it down to the average person's understanding of what the issue is, right? So you touched on it slightly, but just give us clarity here. So what's the problem? Like, for example, why does Ward 54 not have water? What has caused it? And what do we need? What can be done to sort it out ASAP?
Ashraf, unfortunately, with the water system, there is no ASAP. And hence, Johannesburg Water and the municipality have been providing alternative water supply. I'll make an example when the commando system is affected. It takes up to 2 weeks for those reservoirs to pick up to a level that is satisfactory for the municipality to say we are back online. And it does not mean that in that 2 weeks people do not have water, but then you'll find that there is intermittent water supply or low pressure, because the demand subsides the supply. So yeah, it takes Crown Gardens take about a week for it to pick up, to be at those levels where we would say we are, as a municipality, we are happy that the flows are normal. So what we've also been doing is that when we experience such incidences or challenges with the bulk supplier, then we will then switch off the outlets of these reservoirs so that they can build capacity overnight, so that in the morning people have water running.
I do understand it, and the bulk supply you're referring to is rainwater, right? But I mean, here's the point. We've experienced load shedding for a period. In fact, we are, and no matter how it's couched, we basically are having water shedding right now. And you made the point that there's no ASAP, right? So besides the alternative supplies that you're providing, and I'm looking at pictures now of tankers, but I mean, tankers is not the way you want to live your life. We tend to think of tankers in apartheid South Africa, in rural communities, which shouldn't happen, but it happened. And we also tend to think of tankers now in relief countries around the world when they are affected by earthquakes and that sort of thing. It shouldn't happen, not in Joburg, a city billed as the world-class city, right? What therefore, or let me put it this way. And I know you're the spokesperson, I understand that, right? But I'm trying to empathize with those that where the sympathy needs to lie, right? Are we going to suggest to people that, like those are trying to get off the electricity grid to get alternative ways of energy, that in fact it's time now that the citizens of the city of Joburg understands their sense of relative helplessness, and therefore they need to find alternative ways of water supply, not via tankers, however it is, whether it's boreholes, however they can do it, they need to investigate and invest in those sources, because they can't rely on the city or rainwater or the government.
Yes, there are alternative sources like borehole, where people our residents or customers can apply to have a borehole installed. However, we understand that a borehole is quite costly. It's not as cheap as we would want it to be. And hence, during our rainy season, then we would have campaigns on rainwater harvesting. Perhaps residents can invest in Joburg to store that water, because yes, with the infrastructure at this stage, we do need alternatives. And like I said, we can only provide alternative water supply so that we can sustain the livelihood of the residents. I understand that this is a human rights issue more than anything. But when the infrastructure is not at a point whereby it's sustainable, like we say, with load shedding, if the Turton, which is in another municipality, treatment plant, when it is affected by power failure, it's not we don't know whether it's load shedding or just a pure power failure. With our side, we have not been affected much with load shedding, because we do have generators at our site, our reservoirs as well as. But then, if the bulk supply is affected, then it also subsequently affects the city of Johannesburg.
Yeah. Okay, we're gonna wrap up. Before that, there's two comments from listeners, right? One saying our community in Joburg South, or Robert Shem once again, has been left without water for a month now. Okay, and I'll repeat it, for a month now. We have been waiting for the municipality to help us, but so far the taps are still dry. There is no assistance from them, despite our numerous attempts. We have community members that have started their fasting month today, and this is just an added burden with load shedding as well. Please, we plead as a community for assistance. So that's the one. I mean, I think you've answered that, not satisfied them, but you've answered that in terms of you can't sort it out in one day. The other one is, please, can you ask the spokesperson what Joburg Water and Rainwater are doing to resolve this crisis, as we don't receive proper feedback? They are just copying and pasting the same info every day, which doesn't say too much. Now here's the question to you on that one there, right? On the feedback part, right? Are you communicating? So one is a crisis, because you have a crisis. That person saying a month. I mean, is that true that it's a month? Some people don't have water for a month in Robert Shem. I cannot believe it, actually. He can't be speaking the truth. Or what?
Ashraf, I would not ascertain what the residents is saying or the customers are saying, because from our end, we haven't had any complaints for over a month in the Robertsham area. I can confidently say, yes, there has been intermittent supply when we do have these power failures from the bus supplier, but it's not a full month.
Okay, but I mean, yeah. So if this person is saying this, maybe it's not 30 consecutive days, but maybe it's like every few days within the 30 days. I mean, how close to the truth is that person? That's what I'm trying to determine. Is that he or she speaking closer to the truth or further away from the truth, based upon the feedback that you've been receiving?
I cannot say it's close to the truth. That's all I can say. It's not close to the truth. I would understand that everybody wants water every day, and if you do live a day without water, then for you it can be a month, because you are expecting to have a service from a municipality, and I think that's how they are putting it. And let me just cover the second one, where a comment on whether water and rainwater are coming together. We do have a meeting today with residents of Ward 56, and this is not Ward 54, it's South East. And if you are aware that we've also had issues in the South East area, where even residents will go directly to rainwater to demand supply or services. So we do have a meeting with rainwater so that they can be able to explain to the customers, because at the end of the day, we own the customer as Johannesburg Water and rainwater does. But then if we do come together to explain and also talk about the plans that we have for the future, I think that will give some form of comfort to our the customers.
Well, I agree with you. I think, one thing is a crisis. The next thing is people want effective communication. Now that the listener is suggesting that it appears to be a copy and paste. But besides having the meeting, not everybody's going to go to the meeting. Is there a way that you've upped your comms via WhatsApp messages directly to the residents of a community? It's not that difficult in this world, right? That we can, if we've got 1,000 residents or 500, each one will get that tailored message to that community. And I don't get it because I don't live in that area. It's important that we can do that.
We are doing that, Ashraf, and the communication, I must say, it's not a cut and paste. We're giving the community exactly, if we say the system is critically low, we can even, in the past few days, if you are aware, that we've also been putting our levels of those reservoirs to say, this is where we are sitting currently. And the communication that we send, we also share it with the councillors, and they will also distribute to the residents or the affected residents. We also have a bulk SMS where there are critical areas where they are affected. We do send SMSs to those customers.
Okay, so you're satisfied that you're communicating with that. Here's the last point there. Another one. I'm a resident from Joburg South. The water issue is the worst I have ever experienced in the area. Been staying there for 48 years. And this is the longest time we don't have any water. It's more than 10 days. I'll repeat, more than 10 days. They should declare the area a state of disaster in order to sort out whatever powers and actions in place to restore the Crown Garden Tower. Puleng, you don't need to answer that because, I think that's been repeated. Perhaps all I can say to you, right, Puleng Mopeli, I don't want your job. That's all I can tell you. It must be incredibly frustrating. I don't want your job. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ashraf, and have a good day.
Appreciate it. There we are. Puleng Mopeli, spokesperson for Joburg Water. Really, I don't want a job. I don't know how it is. It must be the most difficult thing, and someone who understands communication. How are you able to communicate effective messaging to groups of people when things are beyond your control as the communicator? They're just completely beyond it. I don't know. But the fact is there a crisis? Yes. Is it a disaster? Yes. Is it a state of disaster? Yes. You can't deny that. That's the reality. And then we continue fiddling and arguing between the different political parties as which is the better party. And it doesn't matter whether it's the ruling party of the country, the ANC, or whether it's the other parties, whether it's, the DA, the EFF, they're making their own pronouncements. Malema saying, me, I effectively run the show. I'm paraphrasing what he said in Parliament yesterday. Then we got Al-Jamaa now having a mayor in Joburg. It doesn't really matter. We, as the citizens, are victims when service delivery or when coalitions fail, service delivery is the first casualty, and that means all of us. Let's move north to London, and there's a lot more light on other matters in a moment.